Welcome to the North Canberra Community Council October meeting. A warning for everybody, we have multiple video cameras here recording the proceedings. Some of the recordings may actually work, so be aware that you're being recorded. If you want to say anything without being recorded, let us know and we can turn them off. Now we have a presentation on common ground from a variety of people by the look of it. Yeah. So I'll let Peter Johns take over.
Okay, sorry. Good evening, I'm Peter Johns from Housing ACT, and before I start I'd just like to acknowledge the owners of the land upon which we're meeting tonight, which are the Ngunnawal people. Just also wish to acknowledge the contribution they make to our society, and I would also like to welcome and acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are here tonight. Thank you. So, Common Ground has been we've just started what we call pre-development application community engagement on the development of Common Ground on Block 25, Section 72 in Dixon. The actual community engagement about the development of that land and the broader land around that has been ongoing for some time. It's been undertaken by our colleagues in the planning agency, and we've been using a lot of the information that we've gathered through that community engagement to help us develop the design of this. We've also been working with a range of other community-based organisations, such as the Common Ground Board and the various other community organisations that are part of the government's work around homelessness people. We've got a number of presentations tonight, which are from the Common Ground Board, Di Bray. We've also got the architects who are responsible for the design of the Common Ground Dixon, who are here, it's David Pennington from Collins Cadday Architects. Leon's given us a fairly strict time within which we have to do this presentation. Yep. So without any further ado, I'll just hand over to Di so she can talk about it.
Thank you. Diane Titus-Bray. I've actually spoken to some of you before about Common Ground. I think that was 18 months, maybe even 2 years ago, about the concept of Common Ground coming here. And with me I've got Stephen Bartos, who was our inaugural chair of Common Ground, and he might talk about what Common Ground isn't when I finish telling you how fantastic it really is. So I have been on the board with Stephen since the beginning and have seen Common Ground built in Gungahlin, and now 4 years later absolutely thriving as a community and as the residents, to see them grow and flourish, and to actually see the Gungahlin community embrace the whole project of Common Ground. You know, it just makes my heart sing. So I'm a convert, and maybe some of you need to be converted, but I'm happy to work with you. So Common Ground in Gungahlin has 40 apartments. This complex would also have 40 apartments. And the idea is that you mix 20 people that come from chronically homeless situations and 20 people who are really struggling with low income. They might be working, they might be studying, but they can't get into that employment market enough to pay the rent. And you build a community of people, and you see them do what we do. We get up in the morning, we have a shower, we have breakfast, we go and do something, we come home at night, we have dinner, and we put our feet up and watch telly. You know, we all do that something similar. But for Common Ground, the residents have had to learn to be that sort of resilient. And I think I was asked last time, how long had people stayed? I can say this time that 85% of them have been there since the 4 years. And for most of them, that's the longest tenancy they've ever held, and they proudly hang on to that badge. When we did the launch over here in Dixon a few weeks ago, one of the residents, Greg, who is in Gungahlin and was quite a timid young man when he arrived, drove out specially to say hello to people. He's now got a driver's licence, he's got a car, and he's studying at CIT, and he proudly tells you he was the second signed up resident for Common Ground, and it's a badge he's super proud of. 85%, as I said, have sustained the tenancies for for the 4 years. Some are learning, some are at CIT. There's a couple at Canberra University and a couple doing part-time work. And IKEA out in the Brindabella Park area have started working with Northside Community Services to do traineeships for people who might be suitable to do that. So that's another great initiative. They're doing art. They have art programs that are now being running, this is their 3rd year, and they've got an exhibition that starts on the 29th of November. So if you want to go out and have a look at Common Ground and meet some of the residents and purchase their art, let me tell you, it's stunning. I purchased some last year. That's the 29th of November and it should be on for about a week. They did a survey, so Argyle, Community Housing, who runs the residency side of the building, they did a survey and 90% of the residents said they felt safe and secure. 70% felt that they were really connected with the community and were valued. And 91% have actually embraced getting better and feeling well. 80% say Common Ground is life-changing. And 92% felt that they were now totally safe. Now, as we're on a really tight time frame, I just want to tell you about some of the residents. There's a young man out there called Graham. He's 41. He said that he was the 17th person to sign a lease. They're all very proud of their lease. He said, I always had a roof over my head, but it was Brian Hennessy House, or it was hospital, or it was institutions. This is the first time I've actually had a home that I can call mine. And he was asked, what was the best thing about it? And he said his independence to grow, to meet people and have new friends. I can call my own. It's awesome. I love living here. It's the best place I've ever lived in. Now, 4 years ago, you would be hard pressed to get eye contact with this young man. And so, that is fantastic. There's another young girl out there called Lash. She's got earrings and coloured hair and she's just quite gorgeous. She's a very talented musician. Now, she's from the affordable side of Common Ground. She's a talented musician. She's part of the Woden Community Choir, and she's trying to study. But to do all of those things and pay rents when you're on your own as a young person, she just found it impossible. And when she found that there was a spot at Common Ground, she just rang and said, can I get that spot? She said, as soon as I got the paperwork, I filled it in and took it straight back personally myself, and I've been living here ever since, and it's amazing. So she was asked what was really good about Common Ground, and she said, Common Ground has given me the independence to build my life, but she said even more so, living in Canberra, she said it's one of those places where it's big enough where you can get yourself lost, but it's small enough for you to navigate around, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. When a couple of the residents heard that we were doing the launch out here, I got emails from them saying if you need to meet anybody, they're happy to meet you. So I think what I'm saying is it's an incredible place that we've built in Gungahlin, and so proud of the work that the government did to find the money to do it, that if you were lucky enough to have a Common Ground here, I think you would cherish it. That's all I want to say, and hopefully Stephen will tell you how it came about and why he's as passionate as I am.
Thank you. And my name's Stephen. I live in the inner north, so I know some of you. But I'm also on the Common Ground board. I work for an economic policy firm called Pegasus Economics, and it's always been the case that on the Common Ground board we've had some people from the private sector, from the community sector and the public sector, because the idea of Common Ground is it's a partnership between all three sectors to deliver long-term solutions for the chronically homeless, for people who find it difficult to find housing and keep housing in other ways. It's a Common Ground started in New York. A woman called Roseanne Haggerty converted a hotel that was not being used into really high quality accommodation for homeless New York people. Spread to Australia when Roseanne was a thinker in residence in Adelaide. And Adelaide really liked the concept of Common Ground. They now have 4 of them. We picked up the idea more than a decade ago, and there's a Common Ground that has been built in Gungahlin, now one proposed for Dixon. Common Ground is not just public housing. It's not just housing. The whole idea of Common Ground is that it's different from the standard housing model. First, it's really high quality. The Common Ground is built around the concept that if people have a really nice place to live in, they will value it for themselves, they'll take pride in it. Certainly we found that out at Gungahlin. So it's high quality, it is safe. Often a lot of people who are homeless have found it difficult to escape from contacts with, for example, drug dealers or people who might subject them to violence. The Common Ground complexes are always very safe places to live with passive security, surveillance sort of stuff, but also on-site security as well. And they're supported, so that people who have problems have support on-site to help them overcome their problems. And as Di's mentioned, they're a mix of people who are previously chronically homeless or have some sort of low-income job or a student or some other connection with society. Because the idea is that people get really good role modelling because there's people around them who go out to work each day or who study each day. And that's a really good thing for them to have. So Common Ground is proposed and has been spreading around Australia basically because it works. I mean, it actually genuinely does address the needs of people who otherwise have been missing out, who just cannot hold down a tenancy because they don't have support services or they don't have the safety that they need. Because it is based on those principles of being long-term, permanent accommodation that's high quality and safe, it gives people a chance in life. So that's why Common Ground actually has become identified as a best practice model for dealing with people who are chronically homeless. So that's the basics of it. I understand we've got people here from Collins Cadday who can tell you about what a high quality building they've designed, because they also love it because they're architects and they like their designs, but you'll see that it is high quality as well.
Thanks.
And we're happy to take questions after.
Or now, whenever suits. We're in the chair.
I think Leon asked for questions.
I
Come
think
up
we're
with the chair.
under pressure.
We're under
Do
pressure.
you want to do questions now or later?
It's up. I'll be guided by you.
All right, we've got a question. Let's have it.
The 2 streams, the affordable and chronically homeless, are there time limits to how long people stay, or what, can they stay even the affordable,
Yeah.
even the affordable ones?
What we do see is that if people's circumstances change, so, you know, if they form a relationship and they start a family, they will want to move out, but it's not compulsory. So if you give people a sense that they're going to be kicked out as soon as they get a job, then they will never get a job.
And there are a couple of couples out in Gungahlin now that have actually partnered up and they've got babies, and they know they need to, and what they say is we don't want to move, but someone else needs the opportunity that we've had, so they are going to move on. It's beautiful. Oh, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So what makes it affordable for people to live there?
People don't have to pay more than 25% of their income. So people are going there pay a quarter of their income as the rent. And look, there was a national scheme called NRAS, National Rental Affordability Scheme, that is being replaced, and it's slightly up in the air exactly what it's going to be replaced with, but that has made up the difference in the balance up to now in the Gungahlin Ground.
Okay, well, we move on to the architects.
David, sorry. This is David Pennington. He's from Collins Cadday Architects, and he can talk to you about the design of the building.
Hope you don't mind if I sit just so I can operate the...
Can you speak up, please?
I can operate it.
Okay.
So you can sit, but you need to speak up.
I will do. So Common Ground is really about building a community, as Diane and Stephen have advised. And the design process has really been informed by the Common Ground model, as well as lessons learned from Common Ground Gungahlin, which we were the architects for as well. But also its context and initial feedback from the community, which Peter had alluded to earlier. So as far as context goes, the site is to the southeast of section 72 at the end of Horden Place, and it has the Dixon playing fields to the east and the Dixon wetlands, and then it's bordered to the south by the landscape zone of Sullivan's Creek and Dixon residents to the south. To the west we have Dixon Pool and the commercial precinct and the light rail connections in North Pond. And so to the next slide.
What is the blue dotted line?
So that's Sullivan's Creek.
Ah, okay,
Right here.
sorry.
Yeah, so that's all like essentially quite a
Yeah,
wide
thanks.
landscape buffer zone. And so this is a master plan for the development of the site and its connection through to the rest of section 72. So this is our site here, where it is proposed to have.
Do you want to use the laser pointer? I've just discovered this. There's a button there that says laser. I don't know what the other buttons do.
Can you see the laser?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we've got proposed new roads on the north and south of the block, going east-west, and a new pedestrian link north-south, which will connect Anthill Street down to Sullivan's Creek. So we're really activating all edges of the site to really engage with not only the rest of section 72, but also the broader context of Dixon and the peripheral. So the next slide, zooming in now on the site itself. So Common Ground site in grey here, the pedestrian link to the west, the two road reserves, Sullivan's Creek to the south, and playing fields. So what we're really trying to do here is engage with the rest of the section through this proposed link, this pedestrian link, and creating one side to the block which is highly public, and then filtering through to what would become more private or for the residents on the other side, which would then engage with the Dixon playing fields, and then also engaging with the landscape zone to Sullivan's Creek. So next.
Sorry, what is the, I can't read it, the lowest brown area? Yeah, what's
So it just says proposed road reserve 2, so it's just a new.
That's a road.
That's a road. So this is the existing Horden place, and this would be a new road on the north and the south of the site, and this is the pedestrian link.
So the road, proposed road, extends to the rest.
Yeah, so that's the intent, in the sense that the future intent. In the first instance, we would have a road on the north and south, and then this is future. We don't know exactly what's happening down there, but essentially we have these two roads which will then future connect to.
It'll go through the car park next to the pool, will it?
I think it goes to Rosevear, but I think it's out of my control.
It's not determined as yet. It will be part of the broader planning, estate planning or master planning for section 72. But what came out from the consultation in 2018 was a clear preference to have those east-west connections through the block. So we've reduced the size of block 25 to facilitate roads that may, in the future, connect to other road networks. And so we'll design them with turning heads so that there'll be no throughway until such time as the rest of the sections are solved.
So should I introduce Brooke Yates, who's my colleague in Housing ACT? This one?
So this one is just to show that we have a predominantly two-storey integrated streetscape to the south, such that the activation to the south is at low level, so anything above that is really facing north, not overlooking any of the residents, the Dixon residents beyond Sullivan's Creek. And so the Common Ground fundamentals, or the kit of parts, it would be a communal, so all apartments are generally on the upper levels, and then on the ground plane we're looking to have communal space with communal and office spaces for the support programs, a social enterprise, community gardens and private open spaces, and maximise the 3-bedroom apartments on ground level, which would then facilitate courtyards for families and such. So, planning side of that, then dispersing that onto the site, really engaging with that pedestrian link with a public park as large as we can get it, and then bordering that with community facilities. So the social enterprise, which really engages with that pedestrian link, public park, and also the Sullivan's Creek pedestrian link to the south, and then a highly communal space, a really flexible communal space to the south, which can be activated to the north to the public space and also to the south, and then a buffer zone to the 3-bedroom apartments, which would then have an outlook to the Dixon playing fields, such that we really have a highly public space, then filtering through, as I said before, to the more private spaces on the ground plane. So, plan being the blue being the communal spaces, and then the pink being the 3-bedroom apartments with the courtyards to the east. The social enterprise on this end, which, as I say, was highly connected to the public spaces. The public park being consisting of community-minded spaces, so what could be an open space for playgrounds and such, as well as community gardens for growing vegetables, market gardens and those sort of things. Then from the social enterprise we have a highly flexible communal space, which is then engaged with north-south entry zone, which connects into reception and concierge facilities, highly open office space, which can engage with the community for the support providers, tenancy and social benefits. And then to this communal space here, we're really giving that to the common ground residents as a living room, which engages with the communal space, but also it really breaks out to this what will be this landscape buffer as a more private or secure play area or area for outdoor use within the site that's to be secure, which also lends itself as a buffer to the 3-bedroom apartments. So it's really that blend of highly public to more private. The planning as we go up, it's essentially everything faces to the north predominantly, especially the higher we go, and then the main building mass to the building is at the high level, which goes to 6 stories. What was proposed for 6 stories is north-south, such that we're getting the north aspect as well as the east-west, but not to the south. So as we go up and the concerns of height, we're not overlooking, and also minimising the shadows with this building mass. And we have some shadow diagrams over there if anyone wants to have a look at more detail. But by pushing the mass up there, it allows us to really create these open spaces, and also by pushing the basement to the south of the block to have deep planting zones. So as much green space as we can, and with as much opportunity for trees and a really mature landscape rather than building it over a podium and such. And so the massing.
That's the massing.
Revert to the one they're not showing. Yeah.
No, that's just taking time.
Yeah, so yeah, they are quite large images, but essentially that's a view from that pedestrian link, looking back at the large public space and trying to engage and draw people into the social enterprise on the corner. So, this is coming down, so that green link, Sullivan's Creek to the south, the social enterprise and opportunities for public art, murals for social engagement. Around further to the south, this is that highly flexible communal space, which has a double-storey volume, so really engage with the foliage of that natural tree line, which we're maintaining. That's the southern entry, the east axis. Around to the 3-bedroom apartments, so they're proposed as 2-storey 3-bedroom apartments on the ground floor, and then more 3-bedrooms on the upper levels. This is the 3-storey ones. This is the northern road link. Lots of on-street parking to really activate all sides. This is the
Speak up a bit, please.
This is the breakout from the communal spaces, that green buffer between the 3-bedroom apartments and the rest of the building. This is around to the north, so that's the northern entry on that northern axis into the reception area. It sort of turns its back slightly, but it has a visual link through to that common area, and then the market gardens to the north. Opportunities for shade and interaction to try and draw people from both sides, one from the housing common ground itself, as well as the community into the site. This is the market gardens proposed with integrated shade structures, and the social enterprise space here breaks out. To the south, so showing it's not facing to the south. I've really made the trees transparent here, but this is a view from the other side of Sullivan's Creek, looking north at the project. So that's the predominantly two-story streetscape with the 4-story nodes on the ends that recessed, and then the 6-story component does not face this direction and is in line with the same height as the trees.
Can I ask a question? This photo, or this artist's impression. So, is that the road in front?
The road is here. This is the creek.
That's the creek.
And then this would be standing essentially in the backyard of the residence.
What I do not understand, does that mean that the existing trees will?
Absolutely. We're not cutting any of the trees outside of our block. Yeah.
Sorry, could you go back 2 slides where you had the ground level there, is that a sort of a veranda roof over there, or is that lost space at the ground level to the building above?
No, that is a veranda. It projects slightly, and it also so that glass line is in line with this glass line.
Okay.
Yep. And so it's just to try and increase the distance between the glass and this
that's okay.
global
I was just
line.
wondering whether no, it's okay.
No worries. And there's a section at the end which is also on your side, which has just to show that where the existing residences and the Sullivan's Creek, the existing trees, and the scale of what we're proposing. So that's the two-story, double height volume of the highly flexible communal space, and then all of the apartments face the north, and they're accessed by a single loaded corridor, very wide and generous space, which allows lots of natural light, which we really found to be a real asset to Common Ground 1 or Common Ground Glengarland, where people had a real generous approach to their apartments. It wasn't as cramped and, say, claustrophobic, so to speak, to get to their house.
So people walking along those corridors will be able to look out to the south from level 3 or maybe level 4.
Yeah.
But they won't be living in that.
They won't be living in that space, no.
No.
So yeah, trying to really get, and that also allows for the doors to those apartments to have a screen door to it, so they can even prop their door open, have a screen door, and as their neighbours go past, they can interact with them, but still be secure with a locked door. And that was again another asset to the Common Ground Glengarland.
Question here.
Hi, Andrea. The earlier design showed that there was a road / footpath. So is there not going to be a separate footpath still?
It's so to the north and south of the road reserves, or within the tree line of here.
Will there be a footpath?
There will be footpaths, yeah, on the north and south.
There's
And you said there was a lot of on-street parking. Is there any underground parking for the residents?
There is. So there's a number of underground car spaces.
Is that the usual ratio that the government uses?
It's actually less. We're proposing to have less car parks than the territory plan requires to to facilitate public transport and its proximity to the Dixon Town Centre. But essentially, we've found less reliance on cars for common ground residents, but Di or Stephen might be able to.
So at Gungahlin, there are a lot of residents who actually now take the light rail, which is fantastic, but don't use all the car parks that are there in the building. So this does lend itself to walking to the light rail or buses.
What about shared bike and walk and pedestrian paths, like we have them along Sullivan's Creek at the moment? Is that going to be integrated into this plan?
Well, it's still, if you go back to the ground plan, it's, so the edge of the site doesn't impede on those opportunities. As far as architecturally goes, we haven't engaged outside of our site other than informing this pedestrian link and putting forward what we believe is the right outcome for those road links. But at this stage, we haven't gone past that boundary of those tree line.
And there are a number of residents in Gungahlin that also have bikes, and there's bike sheds for them as well. So, you know, a lot of them just won't.
I was thinking more of people who have bikes who live in the complex, how they can actually get out on their bikes safely to the transit wherever they're going. And I would have thought, you know, you'd sort of be thinking of that when you're designing.
And we'd want to encourage that as well.
Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely.
The Dixon bike path is just across the street.
Absolutely. So the cars, the footpaths that are here will connect into this pedestrian link, which is also sized such that it can take bikes safely.
Can you use your laser to show where the footpath?
Okay, I don't know if I've actually. There's the footpath there, and so you can come up the list and wheel your bike and then start riding to this, and then that can connect into it.
So the playing field is to the right side from here.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just was thinking how to get safely to the playing field because it's surrounded by
Across the road.
It's just across the road.
Just across the road.
So there's a pedestrian link. Let me just go down. So that's a pedestrian entry, which could then come through and then cross over to the road. So yeah, we haven't shown a pram crossing. Well, there's one there, but essentially we would then cross the road.
It'd be easy to ride a bike onto the bike path.
Yes.
Over the bridge near.
Yes.
Yeah,
Near
there's
the
a bridge.
That's right.
There's a bridge across here to the bike path.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's likely that turning head will be reconfigured as this is very indicative of what the roads will be, but once the engineers and such start laying out, there'll be opportunities for road crossings and such.
And we're hoping once that social enterprise and cafe, we're hoping it's a cafe, and I'm already talking to organisations that might want to train young people up to be baristas and chefs and everything else. We're hoping that so many Dixon precinct downer folk come and have coffee there and ride their bikes and just have fun. You know, it's got great potential.
Could you just go back to the big screen that shows all the different units? I think that a lot of it was born in tests. Could you just point to which parts have a certain number of stories, like 2, 3, 4, or 5, or 6, and what the heights are of those particular parts of the complex?
So that component there is the 6-storey component, and it is normally 20 metres high. This through here is 2 stories, which would be in order of 7, probably 7.5 metres, because the ground floor has an extended ceiling height to facilitate these functions. This is 4 stories, so it's closer to 15 metres, and this has a component of 4 stories, which is also about 15 metres.
Can we go back to the context in 72 you showed at the beginning? My question, a general question is, who decided to put this into that corner of the block and not closer to public transport and and Dixon. And the second suggestion is, I think that the pedestrian and bicycle link from that corner to Dixon needs to be considered more clearly, because you would need to go away from where you want to go across the bridge and then take that bike path. So it would be good to have a link beyond, on that side of the Sullivan's Creek that leads past into the open space in front of the Dixon Pool, and then across to public transport and so on.
Because essentially, my understanding of the site is that there is one, but it's like a dirt track, and it's almost like it's already there. It's a design line. Like that would only
There's a bridge
improve.
across
But that would
here,
need to be.
and there's a
Well,
bridge
yeah, but we need to go back.
about here somewhere.
No, further left.
Somewhere there near the swimming pool. And I think one of the diagrams showed a bridge about here.
Yeah.
So if that bridge is built, then you will have your link.
Are you proposing to put a new bridge in, or just in?
That's the
existing bridge?
But that's the ACT government's responsibility.
So that's
So-
I mean,
probably a
I'd love to
better-
design it.
So back to my first question. There are good reasons why to put it there, because there's playing fields and then there's Dixon wetland and so on. But in order for connectivity, that project wants to be much closer to Dixon.
So
who
It is in
decided to
Dixon.
put it there?
So it is in Dixon.
No, closer to
Yeah.
Dixon Central and
Public transport.
the public transport and so on.
So-
it's a long way to touch public transport.
So there is a bus stop just up the top of Anthill Street from the
Yeah, but you
site.
don't take a bus to
No.
the light rail.
No.
You want to walk there.
So that question of connections through the site from the east to the west and from the north to the south, that was one of the clear messages that came out of all the community engagement that was done in 2018. And in part, that road that's proposed and how it connects through the rest of the site offers that opportunity to provide that link through there. I think there actually are very good pedestrian and cycle connections for this site that exist at the moment. That cycle path which runs down there right through Dixon and provides really good access onto the light rail as well as the bus interchange is pretty good. And there will be, within the actual building itself, spaces for bike parking in the basement, but there also should be bike racks for the public area as well. So that for people who want to ride, they have that easy connection out of the basement, across the bridge, down to the cycle path.
Okay.
I think it's
Again, back
So-
to my first question. Who decided to put it there and not closer to the Dixon?
So when we look at all of section 72, there's 3 blocks essentially that could be redeveloped. 2 of them are owned by the ACT government, block 6 and block 25. Block 6 is just to the north of the Pinocchio Early Learning Centre. Block 22, which is...
Can you just point with either with the laser or so that we are a bit more orientated?
So
Okay,
that's-
so at the moment we are talking about this corner block?
That's probably a better one to show you.
Yeah, okay.
So that's block 6, that's block 22 that runs north-south.
Yes. That's
Oh.
Yeah, use a manual.
So block 6, block 22, block 25.
Where's Dixon Pool?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is Rosavere, the tennis club, the Madeira Community Centre, the gallery. Block 22 is currently leased to the Salvation Army. So the ACT government had the opportunity to redevelop on block 6 or block 25. To stack up, the common ground model needs to be 40 units. If we had looked to build 40 units on this block, it would have been a very high boxy element directly to the north of a childcare centre and overshadowing and overlooking a childcare centre. 25.
It's only 50 metres closer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not much.
And as Peter was saying, there are bus connections up here. There's bus connections on Cowper Street, and it's within a kilometre of the light rail, which is considered a reasonable walking distance.
Thanks.
So it's not clear what will happen in the future to the other blocks?
So the EPSDD, Environment Planning Sustainable Development Directorate, have been doing a lot of work around the master planning for the section. Based on feedback, they've stopped until they can resolve what's happening on Block 22, but they will come back to the community to determine what's happening through the rest of the section. But what we've tried to do in designing common ground for Block 25 is be mindful of what was heard and making sure that what we have designed and what we hope to build doesn't rule out anything that the community has expressed a desire to have in the section moving forward.
Sorry, you had a question.
Something that came up in very early discussions years ago was the design of basement parking. And when it was originally, when we were discussing elderly people, they particularly don't like a basement car park where it's generally not very well lit, despite being lit. It's even I can't distinguish things terribly well. Never recognise anyone. It's all open. Anyone can really go in there. Tailgate, you can walk in, anything. And it's and then having to walk from the basement to your unit to a lift or to a stair is a very exposed activity when you are anxious or elderly or frail or have young children. It's always been a big issue. It's always been a big issue in elderly housing. And I would have loved to have seen this addressed here, but I'll just note that it is, I suppose it isn't.
I suppose it is a balance between surface parking and basement. You've got to give one and take from the other in a sense that there's valuable space on ground plane as well that's then limiting other amenities to other people in that respect. We do look to have all of the entries will have card readers as such to limit, if not eliminate, access. Tailgating, I'm not an expert on exactly how that works, but essentially you can't access it. So it is a safe space and it is lit, but I can appreciate that parking will be, the majority of the parking is in the basement, but yeah, don't necessarily have a foolproof answer to the psychology of a basement at this stage.
Yeah. But I think the point you make about lighting is something that we could have a look at when we come to actually do the construction work and see what standards apply. And if we can improve that, then I think we should look at it. I mean, we're very focused around the safety, and Di has talked about how the people out of Gungahlin, appreciate the fact that they feel safe. And so it's important for us to take that up and respond to I suppose, the challenge that you've given us, that perhaps we should look at this again and think about a little bit more about it, and we will.
I think it's worth noting as well, we did...
Sorry, can you speak? It's very difficult to hear.
Can you stand up and turn around?
Stand up, turn
So
around.
one of the things that we did in looking at the early designs and options for the design was looking at surface parking and what that impact that would have on the design of the building. And if we were to take up, as one of the pictures shows, it might be too hard to scroll back to, the basement takes up almost the footprint of the building. To consolidate that parking on the ground, on the surface, we'd end up with a really small developable area, which would mean we would have a big boxier building that didn't have the different gradations of height. It would just be straight up to get those 40 units. It's also important to note, I think the lift well and the lifts will also have that security card access. They won't be for public use. That's part of the model in terms of the security of the residents. So as far as practical, we limit the risks to safety. PJ's right.
Can I say that 50 years ago I got beaten up? I've never forgotten it.
No.
I fought the man that's right. I fought the man off myself. I was strong. But I can still take you to exactly the spot where I got beaten up. I can tell you exactly what happened. So this issue particularly what it's like for women, is still really important.
Absolutely.
And really, you're just doing exactly what every other building has been like for the last 30 years. I mean, you could think about it and say anything about it, and your heart bleeds for us, but really, you've just done nothing.
So what we have done in designing the building is be mindful of the cohort, and the cohort for Common Ground Dixon is women, older women, women with children and families. There's a strong principle within the sort of planning design space that when you plan for women and children, you plan for the safety of all. So one of the things we have considered is those through block connections, the safety and security. It's actually easier for us to manage the safety of someone in a secure basement than it would be on a surface car park. So we're not just paying lip service to the safety and security. We are considering it, and we have considered it in the context of the whole section.
It's still the same situation that current people are. Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed.
I think one of the extra benefits of the Common Ground model is people have a key card and they can only go to their floor. So
Sorry, I mean, that's the same in a hotel, it's the same everywhere.
Well, it is the
Nothing's
same as a
changed.
hotel.
Can you clarify, will the access to the basement car park be controlled by a boom gate which will stop cars but won't stop people walking in and out? Or will it be something like a roller shutter that will stop people walking in and out?
Roller shutter.
Yeah, people, I've seen endlessly people just go in. And it's mostly residents who do it, but you don't know.
What's the solution? I don't know.
You want to pay me to be an architect and a designer?
I agree. I have great sympathy with the argument. I don't know what you can
always
do.
been the case. It's always been the case. If you look for a solution, you find one. If you don't look for a solution, you don't find one.
Any more? One more question?
Well, mine not a question, that's what I was saying. I feel impressed by it. I can see it's more positive than negative. I like the open space feel on the green. North facing, I'm very much into taking advantage of the north sun and keeping the places warm. So I think it is.
I think the architects have, the Glengarvan model is beautiful, and this one is
having
even
had that
better.
experience before, you must, you've got all the answers, I think. I think it's very positive.
Despite my vigorous advocacy for a better basement design, I do think it's a very nice thing.
Okay. Question here?
Yeah, first a comment and then a question. Comment is I think it's fantastic, and I think a lot of the foreseeable issues are wider society issues rather than Block 25 issues, and that's a discussion for another place. You said at one stage that along the back is 2-storey, along the southern edge is 2-storey. Is that residential or non-residential? Because if it's residential, it would seem to be spending an awful long time in the shade.
So the majority of it is that 2-storey volume of the communal centre. So it's about an integrated 2-storey component. If you go to the plans or to that diagram.
Do we have that one on that?
Yes, we do, but it'll take me a while to get to it.
So there's only one apartment that faces south, and that's this one. And some, it's also about giving variety, because some tenants don't necessarily want to have full sun. It's about giving opportunities for all aspects. These apartments through here and through here and through here, they all face the other way. So any windows would be from a kitchen or a bathroom to get ventilation into those spaces, rather than somewhere where you sit and then have an outlook.
And is there provision for water capture, solar panels, etc.? Is that all in the design?
It's provision, absolutely. We've got water tanks in the basement, so the component of the basement here is water tanks, storage for the residents as well.
And they feed into what? Do they feed into toilets?
Absolutely. Yeah, irrigation. External. Majority of it will be for irrigation, but definitely for toilets and things like that. Definitely want to capture and reuse.
Solar?
We are looking at options at Port Sullivan.
We'd love to have a full array of Sullivan.
I think it's also worth noting, sorry, that I've started being invited to go and talk to groups, and North Ainsley Primary invited me to come and talk to them about social justice and homelessness, and it was all the year 6 students, and I have to say their questions were stunning, but part of their social justice component on sharing the planet is that there's 3 or 4 groups that they have to do something called exhibition. And there's 3 or 4 groups that have all chosen Common Ground to be their exhibition. And I've just got an email today from one of the teachers saying, can I take a teacher and a couple of the kids out to see Common Ground in Gungahlin? But they're designing library bags for the kids with welcome notes, and they want to have mats at the entrance that say welcome to Common Ground from Ainsley Primary. You know, it's beautiful. It's just beautiful to see that the thoughts going into it.
More questions?
Just one quick question. I'm interested in the water situation. How are you going to meter the water usage per unit or per apartment?
So each... Oh, you guys.
We'll just have one water meter.
Really?
Yeah. Each of them will have their own electricity meter, but there will be one water meter for all of the, for the whole block.
Isn't that somewhat likely to be abused? The people who take 11-minute showers?
Half an hour.
There's proof of that happening. It is abused.
Actually, the cost of an 11-minute shower, if it's a cold shower, it doesn't cost you anything for electricity or gas.
Sorry, you must give a word.
If an 11-minute shower is a hot shower, then it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more for heating the water than it is for
I'm
the
not
water
terribly
itself.
worried about the heat of the temperature of the shower. I'm more
Yeah.
interested in the usage of the water, which is going to be really a premium situation, as I think you probably all know. So I would be surprised that you don't meter it. And also, I think, really puts the responsibility for water usage onto the user. And I do think that any construction these days needs individual unit meterage.
You know, what
Is
about
it normal unit?
What's so onerous about that? What's so onerous of having individual meters?
I think it's a matter of being able to install them, and then what you actually read them. So each of these units, it'll be one complex. The land will be owned by the territory, and there will not be individual units that will be established like a unit titles. There will just be one unit owner. So there will be just one meter as far as Icon Water is concerned.
There's been an answer around for about 2 decades or more, because it was done in hydraulics. You attach an electronic meter on the pipe, on the side of the pipe, and you text the amount of water going past, and it goes into a meter. So you don't need to put a valve or anything in there. You can have it all electronically, for want of a better word, connected, wrapped around the pipe to each unit.
Yeah, and I get that in individual houses where people have a real interest in that. That might, they would actually use with it.
People use their water. I'm telling you now.
Well, perhaps we could ask you to investigate the possibility of
That's what we will do.
individual metering.
So how is this handled in the Gungahlin?
I think there is just one water meter, and there is no individual metering of each of the units themselves.
And what's the record show?
I will have to find
I
out.
suggest you have a look at that.
Yep, we can do that. Yep.
So a lot of our complexes currently have a single meter, but we're also building some of them with provision for separate metering, and some of them are separately metered. So
sorry, I don't understand when you said a lot of our complexes.
Yeah.
So what kind of complexes? This is the second common ground.
So public housing complexes.
So what is the experience then there?
Well, I think it's mixed. I think for an asset manager and a property maintenance perspective, as the person responsible for paying for the water, it's easier to receive one bill than 40. But a lot of it's about human behaviour, and we do send out sort of educational flyers for new tenancies around water usage. So you can certainly have a look.
And there's the broader community engagement that the government carries out, which encourages people to think about the water and how they use it.
But for that, it's important to know what you use.
Yeah.
So
To be
do,
really engaged.
do the residents have to put in a certain amount for their water, or do they just say, oh, this is free water as part of my rent, I don't have any water charges? Because where I am in a retirement village, my water is included in my rent.
Yeah.
But some people, others who've purchased their units get their water metered. So there is a little bit of friction there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it's, as Leon suggested, something we will investigate. Thanks for the suggestion.
Sue?
I just have a comment about parking in the broader context of Section 72 and some of the advice we've received in the last few weeks from Housing ACT, thank you very much for all the effort we've made, about future-proofing the whole development on this site so that it fits with whatever happens in Section 72 in the future. Now, to me, future-proofing is a lot more than just bricks and mortar and providing tall elements that might match something in the future. It's got to be about people-focused needs and the broader community needs. And I just see some concerns about inadequate sort of access to transport and transport provision in that area, mainly because the closest corner to Cowper Street there is 1.5 kilometres on foot to the Dixon interchange and a bit further to the rail. It is not less than a kilometre as the plans say. That is as the crow or a drone flies, and that's not reality. But if you walk on a safe street, that is how far it is. So I would, the one level of basement parking to me is falling short of what might be needed in the future, say in 10, 15 years' time. You've got families there, you've got 2 and 3 bedroom units, you might have 2 vehicles of some sort per unit. People are going to have to park in the 9 spaces on the north and the south road. That's all that's there. There will be visitors coming to see these people. There will be social service and other providers in cars. There will be common ground workers. There might be carers. There'll be members of the public who want to go and interact with classes or the social enterprise or the cafe or the plaza. So there's going to be this overflow parking all around the site, and I think that to future-proof the site, more parking underground is needed. Yes, it is a cost initially, but in the long term it will mean that the visual and physical amenity of the whole area, it doesn't become a virtual car yard or a car parking lot 24 hours a day, which might happen. And you won't, we don't want people parking on verges, under trees, on footpaths and that sort of thing, whether they're the public or visitors or residents. And I just think one basement car park is inadequate, and also the bike storage area in that basement is too small for what might develop over time in terms of residents' needs.
Can you clarify how many parking spaces are in that basement car park?
40.
40, that's basically 1 per residence.
I think if we were to go down to a second level and have some public parking in there, the issue around the security for the tenants comes into play when you're inviting people who don't live in the building into the basement. We will certainly run the measurements again on the distance to the interchange and the light rail. But one of the things that we saw in the research that was done to support the light rail network was what people would consider a reasonable walking distance or a pedestrian head shed to light rail, and between 1 to 2 kilometres for a predictable high frequency transport network, people will walk along the distance.
That's for a high speed network.
Yeah, that's fine to me.
In a Canberra context though, the light rail is a higher speed option than car or bus. Because it's
Well,
not
I
a
disagree.
So-
It's about the same, if not a little slower than bus.
So you'll measure it again.
We'll measure a walking route.
But so you measure it again, and if it is 1.5 foot, does that mean you'll change anything?
We can't change the position of the building.
No, well,
This
okay.
is the site we have available to develop. We think that sort of 1.5 up to 2 kilometres walking distance to the light rail is reasonable. It's closer to the bus. And healthy, exactly.
Especially for the elderly.
Can I just interrupt before I let you
Yes, you can.
ask a question? How many car parking spaces does a 3-bedroom dwelling need?
1.5 car spaces for a
So
bedroom.
40 might be enough.
I
Okay,
live
now
in
ask a
Braddon,
question.
and with all the new developments I've seen in Braddon, there's been an overflow of cars on the streets.
Yeah.
So there's this idea that people will use less cars. But, you know, thinking that here the tram is already full by the time it gets to Dixon in the AM peak hour. Not everyone's going into the city, and not everyone, people walk north, work north, south, east, west. Could have retirees who have cars who go on holiday, they're shopping. This reduction of car parking is just a false ideology. It may be in 10 years' time there might be less, but it's not happening. It is happening in some, it has happened in some, but the vast majority is because of a bad overflow where they park on the nature strip. And I live in Braddon, I see it all the time.
Is it different because this is a common ground building and they have less need, they have less cars?
But they always say they need, there will be a lesser need for also, there's already lesser now than what the standard one is.
What's the experience in Gungahlin?
The experience was when people moved in, there were very few cars, but 4 years later, some have got driver's licences and vehicles, some ride bikes. There's a bit of both. But yes, as people...
Is it more than 1 car per unit?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't believe so. I think
Can
it's
I ask
each one.
that you check the number of car parking spaces against the requirements, the planning requirements for 40 dwellings, some of which are 3-bedroom dwellings, plus the social enterprise, plus the social workers and other people who have been working on site, and make sure that you at least meet the requirements, because it sounds like 40 will not meet the requirements.
Excuse me, but I was talking about non-residential parking as well. You've already said that you can't have the workers, the care providers, other people who might need to come, or residents, visitors parking underneath. So if the spare parking underneath, that can't be used. It's all up on ground level, cluttering up the place, cars galore. It could be a huge number of cars, public and workers and visitor cars. So the whole place looks like a car yard.
Look, I think one of the things with a variety of government policies around parking and traffic and public transport and encouraging that modal shift is that we do have to do what we can to support and encourage the shift to public transport and more active modes of transport. We've made a conscious decision for Common Ground to have less than is required, noting the experience at Gungahlin. We don't know what the design of the north and south roads will be yet and how many car parks that will...
How can you legally have less parking than is required?
We can put a case in with our development application.
Well, as I say, the current code is a minimum code, and it's failing. And Leon, it's 2 car parks for 3-bedroom unit. Yeah. So, look, it's better to plan and have a bit too much than plan and have too little.
For the future, particularly some of the residential mix may well change in 10 or 20 years' time. We've got to, as you say, we've got to future-proof this.
For this called the broader section?
Well, for the whole the complex here, you could change some of the mix.
So the territory plan, proposed territory plan variation limits the mix. So it maxes out at the 40 and then there's the 10-year split between the supportive housing and the affordable rental. parking will definitely be addressed in the broader Section 72 master planning exercise, particularly once Block 22 and the lease of that block is resolved, and then the future development of Block 6.
Okay, any more questions?
So that means these other blocks which are master planned at the moment, they are already for residential, that's already clear?
Nothing is certain for Section 72 beyond Block 25.
Okay,
Do you just want to mention the two community engagement processes we're doing? While
You
you're
can.
Okay.
Yes, good job.
So just to finish up, there's two community engagement processes that are underway at the moment. The first of which is what we've been talking to you tonight about, our pre-development application community engagement. The period for public comment on that closes on the 7th of November. There is also a draft territory plan variation out for community engagement. The territory plan variation is out because common ground as it exists at the moment is not permitted on the zoning for that block of land. So our colleagues in the Environment Planning and Sustainable Development Directorate have issued a draft variation. The period for public comment on that closes on the 1st of November. So we would encourage you to make as many comments as you would think appropriate. We're heartened by some of the support we've received tonight, and we also really appreciate the opportunity for you to provide us with your input about issues that you think are important to yourselves and areas that we can actually look at and improve on. And we'll certainly take up that challenge.
Just a small question, maybe
Yes.
I'm a bit, because everyone is so enthusiastic, I must say I really do not like this look of this one. I think it's very blocky, it's very concrete blocky to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, would there be any architectural way to sort of like soften this up? Okay.
Yep.
To me, this looks very blocky. Is there any way, and this is a major view, so is there any way to soften this blocky, concrete, industrial kind of look, other than what is always the architectural safeguard, some trees, put some trees around it. So is there any other way? I mean, when I looked first at this or so, I found it different. I'm not sure about colouring in, that is one way, probably a cheap way, but is there any other way?
Well, I need permission from the purse strings, but would love for this project to be out of brick, so that it has that kind of domestic feel, or that sort of relatable component that people have at home made of brick. It's solid, people know what it is about. That is indicative of brick, but I've had to soften it just so that we're not locked in at this stage. I can't commit to that being pre-DA. It's not up to me at this stage to push one way or the other. I'd love to have a component of the project that is brick, if not the majority of it.
Sometimes if you look at facades, sometimes just to sort of like some wooden panels or something like this would soften it up enormously and work very well together with concrete.
Absolutely. A lot of the ground floor, that liminal space of that veranda, if some of the 3Ds, if you look online, is all in timber, the timber columns. We're also breaking up the depth of the facade with the quite deep window treatments and the pushing back of the balconies, such to get depth in the facade as well. So it's not just glass, small balcony, it's a deep balcony that people can use, can enjoy their balcony and feel private, so that the people aren't also looking at them. There's a privacy issue there and a feeling safe issue. But also gives that depth of the facade. So, and not having a lot of glass balustrades, if at all, no glass balustrades, such that is also a way of creating more privacy. Again, that was a really good lesson learned from Common Ground Gungahlin. They were all solid balustrades.
If you're having brick, it will be a lot softer than yes.
I agree.
We all agree.
Can we close off now?
Just-
Sue wants to have the last
Just
word.
have one question about landscape. will all the new trees be higher than the highest element, the 6-storey element? And if so, how long will they take to grow?
Well, I don't know if there will be...
I'm thinking of the overall landscaping for the whole area and the suburban setting and the inner north. And being in character.
Absolutely. Well, the landscape zone permits that, as in we have no basement underneath the landscaping zone to allow for deep-rooted planting trees. I'd love to have the most advanced trees we can get there, but we'll definitely have species that can mature into, say, the oaks or the large format trees, which can create those shady spaces and mix in with the streetscapes of Dixon. I don't think we've gotten to that point just yet, but we've definitely had the opportunities for it and would love to see that. But we want this to be a really high quality landscape zone because that is really the first draw card for the community to engage.
And how tall will the trees grow? Will they be taller than the buildings? Or much
in 50 years?
In 50 years they will. I don't know the time frame of trees.
Well, I think
but
that's
important. We have species that can...
should indicate that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I just haven't got to that detail.
Sorry, so just one last thing to say in terms of your question around the colouring in. This is indicative only. One of the things that's really popular at Common Ground, Elizabeth Street in South Australia, is a mural on the side of the biggest, flattest element. We'd be really keen to do a mural on the southern facade because we have sort of turned the building away to stop that overlooking issue. The Minister's really keen to wait to determine what that mural looks like until
a big platypus, perhaps, because Sunderland is very
In Adelaide, there was a community to actually help design it. That community designed it and painted it.
Yeah.
You can Google it. It's a couple of faces and there's
Yeah, it's good.
So the Minister's keen to wait until the tenants are in to determine what the mural on the site will be.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Now, I'll try and close some of these things. We haven't published it. It's on the video that will probably be published. But, yeah.
Yeah, well done. It's good to see you, sir. As we know.
Thank you. Speak up.
It would be better to have a master plan first rather than piecemeal
Okay, thank you for all that. All right, we've had our presentation. We've got... Pardon?
People can't hear you. Okay, yeah, that's right.
Now can you hear me? I love having this bell.
Quick question there. Is that Triple C coming in a response to this?
That's up to us.
Good.
It's being worked on, yes. It's being worked.
We have a Section 72 working group. I don't know if they're looking at putting in a response to the territory plan variation to rezone that block of land. That would be worth a look at.
No, I think the work is going on in terms of concept plans and the variation, the two deadlines being the 1st of November and the 7th of November.
Yeah.
So there are two components.
Yeah.
People have been working on it. We've had extra meetings with housing about it, asking questions. Jane sent off another tranche of questions 2 days ago
Yeah.
because there are hundreds of pages. it's very hard to remove.
All right. Can I just get an unofficial idea of how many people think the idea of common ground somewhere in Dixon is a good idea? Those in favour of that? Those against? So most of us think it's a good idea. How many people think that the plan we saw tonight is a good enough plan for that site? Those in favour? Right, we've got a few. Those who think it's not good enough for the site? There's a bit of a split there. All right. I encourage you all to get involved in the Section 72 working group. Who's convening that? Are you convening it soon?
No, we're working on
all right.
it.
So I think Sue and Jane.
Appreciate some help if someone can help in any way.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay. Well, let's Sue know who you
Quite a
are.
bit of work's been done so far.
Can I make a comment? I find it incredibly difficult to talk about a little section of a little part of a section when it's. I have the feeling the government already moves into directions, planning roads and other things as well. And I think this is an approach which is not acceptable for me. Because we are working in piecemeals, we are given little bits of information, and it should be in a totally different way. There should be a sort of, this is section 72, what are we going to, how are we dividing it up, what are we going to do, and there should be a consultation on that first, before it starts in a little corner. And
the draft estate plan will be next, and then we'll look at the whole thing.
The estate plan
don't know what detail, but
would make more sense.
we suspect that this use of block 25, with all the exceptions to the planning, the new zoning, everything, and the heights, they say it's future-proofing it to fit with whatever happens in section 72 in the future. It can be used as a precedent. They are looking at the rezoning approaches as a trial or a pilot. They cannot tell us if this has ever been done anywhere else before in Canberra, and they didn't often find that for us. So this is a pilot as to how you can change zoning, get residential and other uses in, change definitions, etc.
Well, I think they have a lot of experience at changing things like that. The territory plan has been varied more than 220 times since 2008. So they know how to change the territory plan. All right, now can we go on to the business of tonight's general meeting? Attendance and apologies. There's an attendance list over there. Has anybody got any apologies to notify Andrea? Jane Goffman, yes, you'd be an apology for tonight. If you think of anybody else, you can either tell Andrea or get the people to let us know. And if you haven't signed in, please sign in and let us know that you were here. Declarations of conflicts of interest. There's a new provision in the new constitution for conflicts of interest to be addressed in committee meetings. I haven't looked for general meetings, but has anybody got any conflicts of interest to declare?
I want to be home.
Good, all right. Okay, I'll try and get through the rest of the minutes of the 18th of September general meeting. Has anybody... all right.
Could I just say the September minutes, there's a couple of typos that just need to be tweaked. And I second the
all right, so can you send in the typos so that they can be dealt with? All right, do we move that, aside from typos, we accept the September minutes?
Yes, I'm saying yes.
All right, Jeff, seconding the motion. Those in favour? Those against? All right, motion's carried. Excellent. Treasurer's report. We have a treasurer here, yes.
So 3 quick things. The current balance, $7,242. The major expenditure of the last month was $1,650 for independent financial reviewers to go through the last 3 years worth of financial statements. So second item, the results of those financial reviews. So we've got those back. Basically, it's not an audit. It's simply a review and commentary of the statements. That'll come to the AGM next month for approval. So there's no pass-fail there. It's simply a set of comments. They note that there are a number of receipts missing and procedural gaps over the last 3 years, but they've also noted that the council has put in a whole series of additional, more rigorous measures which should address those in future. So it's fairly flat and really not too bad in the nature of things. Thirdly, the grant. So we still haven't got this year's grant. The government asked for a forward expenditure plan, given that we had about a $9,000 underspend from last year. We've put that plan in based on the input from residents' associations, so thank you very much for your contributions to that. I had a conversation with the ACT government officials today. They're fairly positive. They're pleased about the progress that's been made in terms of the new constitution, in terms of the review of the financial statements and so on. But they still haven't made a decision yet about actually giving us all of this year's grant. We'll obviously be pushing for that. But we can't proceed with major expenditure quite yet because we don't quite know if we're going to get all of that grant or whether they're going to cut it back a bit. But hopefully we'll get a decision about that quite quickly. Any questions? Great.
Thanks, Bruce.
Well, thanks to Jorgen for the great input on the financial statements. It's a fairly extended and detailed process.
Yeah.
Painful.
Painful, yeah. All right, correspondence. We have a letter from Mick Gentleman on the disbanding of the Environment and Planning Forum. He wrote to the Combined Community Councils. It basically the forum was no longer fit for purpose, according to some people. The forum was cancelled 9 days after Ben Ponton was invited to explain to the forum the contradictions in the government's advice on Technical Amendment 2012-06. So I suspect that had a lot to do with that his continuing refusal to correct the false statements that have been made had a lot to do with the cancellation of the Environment and Planning Forum. Anyway, if we have a letter, we can send that out to people if you're interested. Now,
does he actually refer to the value of the forum in that letter?
I
Does he
don't
acknowledge
think so.
Or say what he wants
Well,
instead?
the letter we got from, the message we got from Ben Ponton was something along the lines of it was no longer fit for purpose, but it didn't say what the purpose
That's
was.
what I mean, what was
And why it was not fit for the purpose that we do not know.
So really down there, in the second last paragraph, it says that they are working on an alternative.
Yeah, fit for purpose was the phrase he used. He's currently working with the Secretariat and his colleagues in other directorates on how we can best engage with members of this forum and a wider group on key policy matters within the Directorate. This work will be completed understand that this work will be completed in the coming month, meaning October, and there will be an invitation to members advising a meeting on how the future mechanism for engagement with the new process to be formalised next year. He is also happy to meet with a delegation from the Combined Community Councils.
Is there a delegation? Is there a board?
Discussion? There are several people from the Combined Community Councils who've indicated they're happy to go and talk to the Directorate about it. Now any more discussion on that? All right, the 2019 to 25 ACT Climate Change Strategy has been released, Shane Rattenbury is expected to come to our November meeting to talk about it. So I propose that we note that and move on to the next item.
Yep.
Next item is an item that was
Could
brought
I
up.
just stop you there for a moment?
Yeah.
Could I ask everybody to have a look at that? Because it's on the web now,
Yep.
so that we have good questions to throw at Shane when he comes. I just think that would be useful.
Yeah. Oh, there was a,
Also the Cooling the City
Yeah.
document that goes
Oh, yeah,
with
the
climate
thing that goes
change
with-
strategy, which suggests a lot of very practical approaches.
Yeah.
They're very careful about the language they use, you know, like might, may, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of scope there for organisations in the inner north to get on board
Yeah.
about shading and a whole lot of other things in the suburban context. And I suggest people look at that. It's only a few pages long, and get some questions
And
prepared for him.
the draft sustainable energy policy is out at the moment for comment, and that's closely related to climate change. So if anybody's interested, you've got a couple of weeks to put in comments on that if you want to look at the sustainable energy policy. Now, we were going to have a presentation from a member on the future of the civic pool, but she wasn't able to get to tonight's meeting. So we could either defer that to the November meeting or have a discussion on it if somebody wants to lead a discussion. Anybody want to lead the discussion?
I would like discussion on it.
Okay, well, will I try to summarise the civic pool discussion? Apparently the civic pool for many years has been leaking a lot of water into the ground, which is probably good for the aquifer, but it makes it expensive to run because you've got to keep putting more water in it. I have been told that some decades ago the government was told about this and told that they could spend a lot of money and fix it, and instead of spending a lot of money they spent a lot less money and did a repair that didn't actually work very well. We also have a proposal for a stadium to be built on that site, and that would be part of the city to the lake thing, which is sort of appearing in different guises. The latest move towards that is the extension of the light rail to Commonwealth Park, which is sort of, and there's a proposal to redevelop the West Basin, and there's a whole lot of related proposals for that area. And the question is, what should happen to the civic pool?
Well, I think you've got to look at
Or
what
to the
happened
side.
at Parramatta. And that's been the big problem.
What happened in
is
Parramatta?
that this government has got very keen on this stadium idea, particularly what's happened in Parramatta. But the people there lost their pool because the extension to the stadium went over the pool. 2.5 years after losing the pool, they get told they'll get a big pool and a new indoor pool and other facilities. It's going to take 6 years for them to get their pool facility given back to them. Now that, whatever happens in the ACT, we can't allow that to happen here. It's just unacceptable. And you need a central pool area in Civic built and open before any stadium.
You don't need a stadium.
The stadium
It won't work
none
in
of this places.
So,
Every pool needs to be in the city.
Yep, sorry.
I
can we
want to
have-
say that I'm sick to death of people talking about sport instead of talking about exercise.
Yes.
We've got an ageing population, we have overweight people, we have people like me with a hip replacement. I can't run, but I can still swim.
Yes.
And I need 50 metres, not 25.
Yeah.
And this is ridiculous that we want to spend money on a stadium when Civic already doesn't have enough parking. And I'm sick of being told that it leaks. I mean, I came to a meeting here 2 months ago and Malcolm Snow, gave me the brush off. Oh, but it leaks. But how old is the pool?
It's been a problem for years. The boiler's been a problem for years. The Dixon pool manager's always fixing it. Year after year after year.
You're talking about Civic?
In Civic, yes. He's
We
been
need a new
fixing
pool.
it because not enough money has been spent on, as Leon intimated.
Can Jochen say something?
Do you know whether the new AMU pool is open to the public?
but it's only 25 metres.
It's not big enough.
Not big enough.
The ANU and the ACT government approached the ANU and wanted to do a combined one. It had to be on the edge of campus, near the, so it would service City West as well as ANU, but the ANU didn't want that because it didn't activate the Canberra area. So that was an opportunity lost, I think.
So it still comes back to the fact that
But parking is an issue wherever
I'm
it
sick
is
of
in
people
City.
talking about sport instead of exercise.
I agree.
Mostly sport is you're sitting. You know, it's entertainment. And it's exercise we need.
Yeah, not
and
watching exercise.
And I've missed many pools that are the same age as Civic that have problems and they need to be replaced.
All right, does somebody want to propose a motion that we could move
Yes,
to
that we
and accept tonight?
retire and regrub the civic pool and spend money on the maintenance that's needed to upgrade it. It's sufficient.
All right, do you want to?
Until a new one is built.
Well, can I also just support some of that? Civic is being densified. So there's per metre, per square kilometre, so many more people there.
Yeah.
When we look at the demand for a sporting facility where we can exercise, it's only growing. That pool is used and used and used by school
All right,
groups, by
so
everyone under the sun.
can you work together and propose a motion? Do you want to do it straight away or?
Instead of a stadium, we want an active pool.
Yes.
Big pool for the community.
Yeah. And also, I've been swimming there since 1991, and I continue to be many times when it's not been well managed and not well marketed. And so, and now I can see so many changes in the people using it. And you think about a pool that's used 363 days of the year, and how many people how many days in the year do people sit and watch the Raiders?
All right, so can we have a motion or, yes, Paul?
Question.
Yeah.
How do we fact check this story from the government? The pool cannot be repaired.
Pardon?
How do we fact check the government's
Fact check, I don't know.
Because the same thing happened over the Woden, with the hydro pool. Eventually the specialist came out with the book and said, excuse me, not true. Same thing happened with Longmore Bridge. They started a myth about, oh, it's getting old, we need to replace it. Out came the original engineer and said, no, not true.
Yeah.
I'd like to, and if you listen to the chair of the Woden, she can list off the number of times the government has tried this, you know, oh, need repair, needs this, needs this, we need to do away with it. How do we fact check this one? Because I suspect, and I agree with the person who spoke before, when Malcolm Snow spoke about, he just said that as if it was so true.
Yeah.
I doubt anything he says.
Well, I mean, anything can be repaired if you put enough money into it.
I think we need to think laterally and think about how do we get someone to fact check this,
All right.
this rubbish.
So,
right. Can we
who
just
were the
filter out?
those
Filter out.
consultant who came and said, no, this is rubbish? Who paid for that?
Okay, all right. Rather than discuss this further tonight, how about a group of you get together? Who wants to? Do you want to coordinate it for the time being, Marianne? And come up with a motion that we can put to our November meeting.
Including an expert advice.
Yes.
If possible, yeah. All right. Now, committee decisions. Right, the committee met on the 3rd of October. We accepted Jacqueline Rostian as a new member. She was going to talk to us today about the civic pool. For November, we're expecting a presentation from Climate Minister Shane Rattenbury on the climate change strategy and living infrastructure plan, cooling the city. And I plan to follow up immediately with a presentation on ACT emissions targets in context so that we can discuss both of those together.
Can I?
Yep.
I made this suggestion to you. I actually would find it more useful to hear you first, because I'm totally not very well informed. Most people aren't. It would help me enormously to better understand Shane Rattenbury's presentation you speak first, then I'll probably be better able to formulate a question.
All right, my presentation was basically a response to Shane Rattenbury's presentation, which I've already seen. So I conceived it as something that you would to say afterwards, but I could go first. Yes, Paul?
I'm sort of backing up that suggestion there because, like you, I've seen Shane Rattenbury's presentation. If you want to see Shane Rattenbury's presentation, read the thing online because that's all he does.
Yeah.
He just basically reiterates everything in there, bats off any questions, doesn't give you much, I can assure you. So I'm actually more in favour of what you're suggesting.
Okay, well,
any information to inform people first.
Well, I guess I could do that and make sure that the presentation more or less makes sense in itself then. Yeah, I'm happy to take that suggestion on board if nobody objects.
One possibility, we're talking about the next general meeting.
Yeah, next general meeting.
So one possibility would be to have Shane Rattenbury speak and then actually have you as a formal respondent.
No, that's the whole idea, is not to do that.
I'm easy on that one.
As long as it keeps the time.
Because he's not going to respond.
This is an AGM. Is there going to be sufficient time? Because if you speak an AGM, you let the speaker who's been invited go first and settle down and do the usual admin stuff for the AGM. You don't want to make somebody who's been invited to be the speaker to go through the excruciating service of doing the who's going to be voted in and who's going to be voted out.
He is the local member.
You want like a little bit of excruciating experience of doing
No,
it.
I think we would have the presentations and discussions first and then have the general business like we've had tonight.
Yeah, but you don't want to go beyond half an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, yeah, all right. Well, we'll think about that, yeah. Committee decision, Section 72 working group, have we got an update? Sue?
Yes.
Yeah.
There has been a lot happening in the last 4 weeks since we met with Housing ACT on the subject matter we heard about tonight. We haven't drafted a letter on parking issues in Section 72 because the Friends of the Dixon Pool in mid-September wrote to two ministers asking a series of questions about parking plans, timeframes, consultation, impacts on pool patrons and longer-term parking plans for Section 72. They haven't heard back yet, but I expect they will in the next couple of weeks. And two people from the Section 72 working group were involved in that letter. So we propose to wait to see what we get as a reply and then work out what NCCC might need to focus on in terms of parking issues.
Yeah.
We had a meeting with Housing, another one, last Friday. 3 of us went along with a series of specific questions, just over an hour with them. That was pretty solid going, and I think certain things are becoming clearer as was raised from the floor before, unfortunately, about precedents. We've provided feedback this week to Housing on their record of the 12th September meeting that we went to, that briefing session. 4 weeks after that meeting, we got asked to review their record because the record is now going to be a formal part of the government's input to the development application that's going to be out soon after this pre-engagement stage. Jane has sent off more questions to Housing in the last 2 days because of the complexity of the issues arising from what we heard tonight. And the working group's looking more at preparing ourselves for when the draft estate plan comes out, some contacts being made with some of the lessees in Section 72, the people who are there now, who have varying levels of knowledge about what's going on, despite claims by the government about how they've contacted everybody and consulted everybody. Anyway, if anybody is willing to help us in any way, even a small way, please see us after the meeting, because we're at the pre-engagement stage. They're having this 6-week pre-engagement process because the planning rules now require it for buildings of a certain size. Then we get into the actual development application. So that's why it's this drawn-out process.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Sue. Any update from the Macarthur Wakefield Northbourne Working Group? I did see something about that the other day. It's been the issues are being considered by the National Capital Authority, and they have decided not to change their plans. I think is they've decided not to change their plans. So it's
So they're going to leave the heights of 48 metres at the corners.
I think that's the case. Yeah, whatever they're not reducing the heights that they had planned. So there's a very good chance that that will be passed either directly or by default by the federal government. Combined Community Councils, their next meeting is the 2nd of November. Not much else to report. ACT Planning Review Working Group update. I'm the convener of that working group, and I'm yet to organise a time when we can all get together. I'm sorry about that, but it is a long-term process. We've still got time to do it, although it's a big job. Updates from residents' associations. Turner. Yeah.
Simon Clark from Watson Community Association. Two of our major issues at the moment are the old Watson High School site. We are currently told that negotiations on that site have stalled. They haven't told us how far apart the parties are, but they're obviously a reasonable distance apart. However, we have had assurances from a number of sources that green space will be retained, which is our major issue. Our concern is that they haven't actually defined what green space means. So does it mean the car parks, or is that not green space? Is that part of the building footprint, etc.? So those things that will be thrashed out. The second major issue in Watson at the moment are the two big blocks on the Federal Highway, blocks 74 and 76, either side of YWAM. They're currently being surveyed, and the current plan is for them to be released for sale sometime in 2020. The only assurance that we have, we're asking for the NCA building envelope to be extended right to the back of that, of those blocks, not finish halfway and then jump up to 5 or 6 stories like Norabro have. We haven't had any decisions on that yet. The one decision, or the one useful piece of information we have had, is that we are told that Rachel Stevens-Smith has stated that she wants the green space and park area to be mandated before the blocks are sold, not afterwards. So that will be a condition of sale rather than up to a future developer to decide where they want to put the playground, who can access it, etc., etc.
That's a good idea. Yep.
So we'll be keeping an eye on both those things.
Okay, thanks. Reid?
There's two things. We had a very useful meeting last night with Shane Sloan, who's the new director of the licensing and compliance area of GCCS. And we mainly, as this is for Reid, a lot of the things that he can talk about under his remit were verges and the tendency for people to park all over them and compact the soil, damage the trees. This not only applies to some owners, but also Actuideal and Icon Water, etc. And he's quite happy to be on the ballpark on that. We have had people also actually carving parking pads and bitumising it and putting in a sump into the verge. The verge is actually territory land, it's not personal land. And that we've been complaining about for the last 5 years. We may actually consider doing something about that. We also talked about dogs barking. He's apparently very much on the prowl of people who don't pick up after their dogs, and also working out how to try and stop the nuisance factor of being woken up half the night with dog barking. Trees also, because in Reed, so much of the core of Reed is heritage. The trees are very important, and you mentioned cooling, etc. We do want to make sure that as much as possible that the sustainability of the trees, even though they are getting old, like so many of us, can be maintained for as long as possible. Talking about getting old, Reed Residents Association commemorated or celebrated its 75th anniversary not so long ago, and we were delighted to see Leon there, and we had a very fine speaker, Dr. David Heaton, who gave us a very, very intriguing speech on Sir George Houston Reed and his foibles and his accomplishments.
Yeah. I must say it was a very entertaining speech, that one.
He's a fantastic speaker, and he's actually has the responsibility to do the first 8 Prime Ministers. You get a chance to listen to him. He's fantastic.
So when you go up to the Museum of Australian Democracy in the next few years, you'll be able to buy books, biographies of the first 8 Australian Prime Ministers written by him.
Yes. He's Dr. David Heaton, and he's good fun, and he's a very amusing historian, which is really nice to hear.
All right, I have a feeling Turner wants to say something.
Oh, sorry, just the Turner residents are in. I'm no longer on the committee. I've been for a couple of years, but I've come along here. It's really struggling as the Turner suburb has changed a great deal in the last 15, 20 years. It's now, I think it's down to less than 20%. I think it's 13% houses and another 12% townhouses, the rest are flats.
Yeah.
And we have a high portion of rental as opposed to ownership. That's changed the interest in residents association. We have letterbox every letterbox in the suburb. There's more of them now, and it's difficult to get a coherent message from the suburb, and I suspect we might. Braden would have had the same experience over the years, and it will happen more as the suburbs along Hawthorne Avenue get the same effect.
Yeah, and I did check. There is a car park on the corner of Watson Street and Barry Drive that is illegal.
The gravel car park.
The surface gravel one.
Yeah.
It's zoned in a certain way that car parking is not permitted. But it's been used as a car park for many years. The government is finally going to rezone it so they can put the bus layover there and move that away from
We had a big fight over that 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was lost. The bus layover was part of the.
So they've been using it illegally as a car park for 25 years.
It was
they
put it in as a temporary car park 25 years ago.
Now they're going to change the rules to make it legal for it to be used as a bus layover, which is.
Well, they went and they gave ANU the current bus layover, and then found that they had to find somewhere else for it, and they searched high and low apparently, and that was the only feasible option.
Yeah, one of the other options was down near the civic pool.
Yeah.
not on the civic pool.
They had one that was in the middle of a roundabout. The ones they came up with were ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
why does it need to be changed?
Anyway,
it's there, but but until they hand over the current bus layover, it will stay a car park.
Yeah.
In theory, they're going to then upgrade Turner Parklands if they do if the bus layover. That was part of the deal.
Nice. Yeah, it's a bit smelly around there sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The Gross Pollutant Trap is ancient technology. It needs to be upgraded.
Okay. Any other residents associations updates? Any other business?
Yes.
Oh, Jeff, I was going to close the meeting. What would you like to say?
As you know, I've objected to the development proposal where the old motor registry was.
Yeah.
It's short on many code breaches.
Yeah.
And I'm asking the North Canberra Community Council to approve we take that to ACAT.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it to ACAT.
Yeah.
There are so many breaches. They haven't updated the traffic plan when the traffic's changed because of the Coles development, and the development right beside it, the traffic plan is about 4 years old. It doesn't meet solar access by any margin. I think cross ventilation. But once we get the T documents from ACRA, I'll find more devil in the detail. It's what's the building right now?
That's opposite of
It's where the old motor registry is. So it's north of the current building they're building right now.
Oh, right.
On Charles Street.
Right, okay.
And it's, so once I get the two documents, then I'll get the devil in the detail.
Yes.
So what I'm asking is MCC approval.
Do we
For all
approve?
these large buildings actually in future, if we object and take it to ACAT, we get all the documents, all the information in the T documents, and don't have to waste weeks and months trying to search for the detail.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So, do we approve the lodgement of an appeal to ACAT? Those in favour?
But there's also, I think, a second part of it wasn't it? The NCCC paid for the cost of the T documents.
well, the NCCC, yes, well, I would pay for it and then I ask for money back.
Yeah.
Well, basically, if we lodge the appeal, we pay the costs.
It's $350. How cheap is that to get all the devil in the details?
Okay,
The
all
other
right.
one was down where Fenner Hall is on in Radden on Lawana Street. I objected myself to a development that was said they wanted to visit a car parking over in Fenner Hall.
Yeah.
And I went, no, they got approved. So I took that ACAT and I lasted half an hour because I said, do you live within 300 metres of the house? No. Well, you can't take it to ACAT.
All right.
So what I have to do there is get NCCC to
take
it.
Yeah. So is that still an option, or is it too late for us to do
Well, I
that?
didn't know about that at the time.
Yeah.
But I think in the future, if you're objecting to something that's say more than 300 metres from you, ask NCCC to object. Because I was right, but I was wrong.
Yes, just wrong.
Is that possible that the organisation can?
Sorry?
Is that possible for NCCC?
Yes.
In some cases,
In
at least.
the suburbs?
We have standing.
We have standing for some things.
If they said, oh, you are not doing 600, 300.
300, more than 300 metres out, and if there's someone else local within that objects, they throw you out.
Yeah.
Is that something that could be looked at in your territory plan review exercise?
Probably, yeah.
I mean, that
Sure,
might be
it's
something.
certainly, yeah, so, can somebody make note of that and make sure that it gets fed in?
Yeah, it might be 500 metres, I think it was 300.
Whatever it
anyway,
is, yeah.
You get the idea.
Yeah. Okay, so now we had a motion to lodge an appeal to ACAT about that particular. Can you make sure Andrea knows exactly which development it is that we're appealing against? The development application number or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'll give you the DA number.
Yeah. Okay, so that can be recorded in the minutes. And now we.
Oh, are we going to vote on it?
I thought. All right. Those in favour of appealing, we have a clear majority. Those against, nobody against. All right, very clear majority. We also have tried a phone number that we could put on our website, and a system that will allow us to divert that phone number to whoever happens to be on the committee at the time. I thought we'd convene a short committee meeting to agree to pay that and let everybody else go home. Is everybody happy with that? So the rest of you can go home and committee members have to stay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.